I walked into the bank to withdraw $500. The teller whispered, "Ma'am, sit down." The first thing I noticed wasn't the silence. It was the way the bank teller looked at me as if she'd just seen a ghost. I'd walked into that branch with exactly one goal: to withdraw $500 so I could keep the lights on through the weekend. My checking account was nearly empty, my pickup truck needed a new transmission, and my 17-year-old son, Ethan, was pretending not to notice the overdue bills stacked beside the microwave every morning. I slid my debit card across the polished counter with an apologetic smile. "Just 500, please." The young teller typed for a few seconds, frowned, typed again, then looked over her shoulder toward the manager's office. When her eyes returned to mine, all the color had drained from her face. She leaned forward until her voice became barely more than a whisper. "Ma'am," she said carefully, "I need you to sit down." I laughed nervously. "Is my account overdrawn that badly?" She didn't smile back. Instead, she pressed a silent button beneath the counter and said, "Please don't leave. Someone needs to speak with you." My stomach tightened. Every terrible possibility crashed into my head at once. Had someone stolen my identity? Had my mortgage finally caught up with me? Was I about to be arrested over some mistake I didn't even know existed? The customers standing behind me started watching. A man folded his newspaper. An elderly woman clutched her purse a little tighter. Within seconds, the branch manager hurried out, straightened his tie, and offered me his office. "Mrs. Harper," he said politely, "there seems to be an unusual issue with your account." I followed him on shaky legs, wondering how asking for $500 had suddenly turned into the most frightening moment of my life. As soon as the office door closed, he turned his computer screen toward me. My account balance wasn't a few $100s. It wasn't even a few thousand. Across the top of the screen were numbers so large my brain refused to process them. I blinked once, then twice. "That has to be wrong," I whispered. The manager didn't answer immediately. He simply nodded toward the screen again. "Available balance, $48,713,229.18. I stared at the number until it blurred. "I've never had more than $8,000 in this account," I said. "Whoever owns that money, it isn't me." The manager inhaled slowly. "According to federal verification records," he replied, "Mrs. Harper, every dollar legally belongs to you." I thought I was going to faint. My hands were trembling so hard that the bottle of water the manager offered me rattled against the desk. "No," I kept repeating. "No. There has to be another Rebecca Harper." He quietly shook his head. "We've already verified your social security number, driver's license, biometric records, and account history." He clicked through several encrypted screens before stopping on one document marked confidential. "The transfer happened at 8:14 this morning." My pulse pounded in my ears. "Who sent it?" I asked. His expression changed. It wasn't excitement anymore. It looked almost sympathetic. "The transfer originated from a private trust that has existed for 22 years. 22 years. The number punched the air from my lungs. That was the exact year my father had disappeared. Officially, everyone believed he had abandoned us. My mother repeated the story so often it became family scripture. Your father chose money over his family, she'd say. Don't waste tears on a man who never looked back. I was only 16 when he vanished. The police searched for weeks before the case went cold. No body. No goodbye. Just silence. My mother burned every photograph that included him. My older brother, Daniel, inherited her bitterness. Forget him, Daniel used to growl whenever I asked questions. He was a coward. Eventually I stopped asking because every answer hurt more than the last. I married young, buried myself in work, lost my husband to cancer 7 years later, and spent every day since trying to keep my son afloat. The idea that my missing father could somehow be connected to $48 million sounded impossible. Who created the trust? I whispered. The manager hesitated before turning the monitor once more. A single name appeared beneath the authorization documents. Jonathan Ellis Harper. My father. The room spun. My breathing became shallow. That's impossible, I muttered. He's been missing for over 2 decades. Before the manager could respond, someone knocked firmly on the office door. Not once. 3 precise knocks. He stood, opened it, and instantly stepped aside. 2 men in dark suits entered, followed by a woman carrying a leather briefcase with a silver Department of Justice credential clipped to it. My heartbeat doubled. The older man extended his hand. Mrs. Harper, he said calmly, I'm Special Agent Miles Carter with the FBI. We need to discuss your father. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs refused to move. Agent Carter waited until everyone sat before placing a sealed folder on the desk. First, he said evenly, you're not under investigation. I hadn't realized I'd been holding my breath until it escaped in a shaky exhale. The woman beside him opened her briefcase and removed several photographs, placing them face down in front of me without revealing them yet. Second, Carter continued, everything you're about to hear has been protected by federal court order for 22 years. My mouth felt dry. Protected from who? He looked directly into my eyes. From the people your father was trying to expose. The room fell silent. Carter explained that my father hadn't abandoned us. Not according to the evidence gathered over 2 decades. He had been recruited into a classified financial investigation involving international money laundering, corrupt corporate executives, and public officials who had stolen hundreds of millions of dollars from military procurement contracts. He volunteered to become an undercover financial witness, Carter said. The operation required everyone, including your own family, to believe he'd disappeared. My hands curled into fists. You're telling me he let his children believe he abandoned them? Carter's jaw tightened. He argued against that decision until the very end. The woman finally turned over the first photograph. My breath caught instantly. It was my father, older, gray-haired, but unmistakably alive. Standing beside him were several decorated military officers and federal agents. Another photograph showed him receiving what looked like a civilian medal. A third showed him smiling while holding a newspaper dated only 3 weeks earlier. 3 weeks. My father had been alive 3 weeks ago. Tears blurred my vision before I even realized I was crying. Where is he now? I asked. No one answered. Carter slowly slid the final envelope toward me. Across the front, written in familiar handwriting I hadn't seen since I was 16, were 6 words that shattered everything I believed about my life. For Rebecca, if I don't survive. Just as my trembling fingers reached for the envelope, the bank's front lobby erupted with terrified screams, followed by the deafening sound of shattering glass. The envelope slipped from my trembling fingers as another explosion of glass echoed through the bank. Someone outside shouted, "Everybody get down!" Instinct took over before thought ever could. Agent Carter grabbed my shoulder and pulled me away from the office door while another FBI agent drew his weapon and positioned himself between us and the hallway. The branch manager dropped behind his desk, his face completely drained of color. Through the narrow office window, I caught a glimpse of terrified customers lying flat on the marble floor. A little girl clung to her mother's arm, crying uncontrollably. The alarms began screaming throughout the building, mixing with the pounding of footsteps and frantic voices. Carter pressed a finger to the earpiece hidden beneath his jacket. "Status," he barked. A crackling voice answered almost immediately. 3 armed suspects entered the lobby. "They're demanding the woman from Office 3. Carter's expression hardened. "They know she's here." My heart nearly stopped. "They're looking for me?" I whispered. Carter met my eyes without hesitation. "Mrs. Harper. I don't think they came for the money. I think they came because your father left you something far more dangerous." Within seconds, 2 local police officers rushed into the office through a secured hallway entrance, followed by members of the bank's emergency response team. The FBI agents exchanged quick, coded instructions that sounded rehearsed from years of working together. Carter turned back toward me. "Listen carefully. The trust wasn't the only thing transferred into your name this morning." He opened the envelope I hadn't been able to touch and carefully removed a handwritten letter along with what looked like a small encrypted storage device sealed inside a clear evidence pouch. "Your father anticipated this day," Carter said quietly. "He instructed us that if anyone came after you before we could reach you safely, we were to give you this immediately." My eyes fixed on the familiar handwriting. Even after 22 years, I recognized every curve of every letter. Carter unfolded the first page and began reading aloud. "Rebecca, if you're hearing these words, then I either ran out of time, or the people I spent half my life bringing down have finally realized where I hid the last piece of evidence. I never abandoned you. Every birthday I missed, every Christmas, every tear you cried, I carried with me. I accepted being remembered as a coward because it was the only way to keep you alive." Tears streamed freely down my face. Every lie I'd believed for 22 years was collapsing in front of me. Then Carter stopped reading and stared at the next paragraph. For the first time since entering the bank, even the seasoned FBI agent looked genuinely shaken. "What is it?" I demanded. Carter slowly lifted his eyes toward me. "Your father says there's someone inside your own family who has been helping the organization from the very beginning." My pulse thundered in my ears. "Who?" Carter didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned the page so I could see the final handwritten sentence myself. The ink looked slightly smudged, as though it had been written in great haste. "Rebecca, never trust Daniel. He knew the truth long before you did." My entire body went numb. Daniel, my older brother. The man who had spent 2 decades convincing me our father had willingly abandoned us. The same brother who suddenly became wealthy a few years after Dad disappeared despite never holding a steady job. The same brother who insisted Mom destroy every photograph, every letter, every memory connected to our father. Memories I had ignored for years suddenly came rushing back. The expensive vacations Daniel could never explain. The luxury truck he claimed he'd won in a raffle. The mysterious phone calls he'd always take outside. My breathing became shallow as every missing puzzle piece began fitting together. Before I could say a word, Carter's radio exploded with another urgent transmission. Agent Carter. Suspects are retreating, but we've got another problem. Carter grabbed the radio. Report. The voice came back strained and urgent. We've identified one of the getaway vehicles. Carter's face froze as he listened to the next sentence. Then he slowly looked directly at me. Mrs. Harper. He said quietly, the SUV waiting outside the bank is registered to your brother, Daniel Harper. For a moment, I couldn't hear anything except the pounding of my own heartbeat. Daniel? My brother? The man who had taught Ethan how to throw a baseball, who showed up every Thanksgiving carrying expensive wine he claimed was on sale, who hugged me every Christmas and called me little sis. My knees threatened to give out. No. I whispered, shaking my head. You're wrong. Daniel can be a lot of things, but he would never. My voice faded as another memory surfaced. 3 weeks earlier, Daniel had unexpectedly stopped by my house. He hadn't asked how I was doing. He hadn't asked about Ethan. Instead, he'd wandered into my tiny kitchen, glanced at the stack of unpaid bills, and casually asked, "You still use First National Bank?" At the time, I thought it was an odd question, but I answered anyway. Then he'd smiled. A strange, almost relieved smile, and changed the subject. Now that conversation replayed in my mind like a warning I had completely missed. Agent Carter watched the realization spread across my face. We're not accusing your brother based on one vehicle, he said. We've been investigating him for nearly 8 years. 8 years. My chest tightened. Then why didn't you arrest him? Carter's expression remained calm, but there was frustration behind his eyes. Because every time we got close, someone inside the organization tipped him off. We could never prove who was feeding him information. Before I could process that, another FBI agent hurried into the office carrying a tablet. Sir, she said, breathing hard, we've recovered traffic camera footage from 2 blocks away. Carter took the device, and within seconds, the screen displayed grainy video of a black SUV speeding away from the bank. The driver's face was hidden beneath a baseball cap. But the passenger wasn't. My blood ran cold. Sitting in the front seat was my mother. The room seemed to tilt beneath me. My own mother stared straight ahead in the video, completely calm, as though escaping from a failed armed operation was just another errand. I covered my mouth, trying not to scream. No. No. That's impossible. Carter lowered the tablet. I'm sorry. My mind refused to accept what my eyes had just seen. Suddenly, dozens of forgotten moments came rushing back. Mom refusing to let me ask questions about Dad. Mom insisting we move only weeks after he disappeared. Mom tearing up every letter addressed in his handwriting before I could read them. Mom telling Ethan, "Men like your grandfather don't deserve to be remembered." At the time, I thought it was bitterness. Now it felt rehearsed. Carter opened another file and slid several financial records across the desk. Your mother's accounts received anonymous deposits totaling over $12 million during the years your father was in protective custody. I stared at the paperwork without blinking. She was paid? Carter nodded once. We believe she accepted money in exchange for keeping your father's identity hidden and ensuring no one searched for the truth. My stomach turned. The woman who had kissed my forehead every birthday, who cried at my wedding, who held my hand at my husband's funeral, had been living a lie the entire time. Then Carter handed me one final document. It was my father's sworn statement to a federal judge, dated 21 years earlier. In it, he begged the court to let him secretly contact me just once, to tell me he loved me. The request had been denied because investigators believed it would expose the operation. Tears rolled down my face uncontrollably. My father hadn't abandoned me. He had sacrificed everything, including his own daughter's love, to protect us. Before anyone could speak again, the bank's security chief burst into the office, his face pale. "Agent Carter, we've got another situation." Everyone turned toward him. What happened? Carter asked sharply. The security chief swallowed hard. A maintenance worker just reported finding an explosive device underneath Mrs. Harper's pickup truck in the parking lot. Every person in the room froze. Carter immediately ordered the building evacuated while bomb technicians raced toward the parking area. He grabbed my arm and hurried me through a secure hallway toward the rear exit. Police officers formed a protective circle around me as sirens echoed from every direction. Across the street, reporters were already gathering behind yellow tape. As we reached the back door, Carter's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen, and his face lost all expression. "What is it?" I asked. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slowly turned the phone toward me. It was a live video call from an unknown number. The screen showed a dimly lit room, and sitting in a chair with his hands tied behind his back was Ethan. My son looked terrified, but he was alive. Then another figure stepped into the frame, smiling directly into the camera. Daniel calmly leaned down beside Ethan, looked straight at me, and said, "Rebecca, if you want to see your son again, bring your father's evidence, and come alone." My world stopped. Every sound around me, the sirens, the shouting officers, the helicopters overhead, faded into nothing. All I could see was Ethan's terrified face on that phone screen. His mouth was covered with gray duct tape, but his eyes said everything. He was trying to tell me not to come. Daniel rested a hand on Ethan's shoulder as though they were posing for a family photograph instead of a kidnapping. "You have 1 hour," he said in a calm, almost friendly voice. "If the FBI follows you, if the police interfere, or if that encrypted drive leaves your possession before you arrive, your son dies." The call ended. I lunged toward Carter. "We're going after him now." My voice cracked with desperation. Carter grabbed both my shoulders before I could run into the parking lot. "Rebecca, listen to me." "No!" I screamed. "That's my son." Tears blurred my vision as I struggled against him. I already lost my father for 22 years. I'm not losing Ethan too. Carter didn't raise his voice. Instead, he looked me straight in the eye and said something that instantly stopped me. Your father predicted this exact scenario. My breathing caught. Carter reached into the folder and unfolded another sealed page written in my father's handwriting. At the top, in bold black ink, were the words, "If they take Ethan." My legs nearly gave out. With trembling hands, I unfolded the letter myself. The handwriting was unmistakably my father's. Rebecca, if you're reading this section, then the people I've spent my life fighting have realized that family is your greatest strength. They will use Ethan because they know you would sacrifice everything for him. But listen carefully, do not give them the evidence. The encrypted drive contains the identities of every surviving member of the organization. If it falls into their hands, hundreds of undercover agents, military witnesses, and innocent families will die. I know this is an impossible burden for a father to place on his daughter, and I pray you'll forgive me someday. I also need you to know one more truth. Ethan was never supposed to be vulnerable. Since the day he was born, he has been protected by people you never knew existed. I looked up in confusion. Carter quietly nodded toward the rear parking lot. 3 black SUVs rolled silently through the gate. Men and women stepped out, dressed like ordinary civilians, but the way they moved was anything but ordinary. One woman carried a sniper rifle case. Another man wore the insignia of a special forces unit beneath his jacket. Carter lowered his voice. For 17 years, your father secretly financed a protective detail around Ethan. Different agents. Different cities. Different identities. They never introduced themselves because Ethan was never supposed to know they existed. My mouth fell open. Every strange stranger who had appeared at Ethan's football games, every mysterious neighbor who moved away after a few months, every substitute teacher who seemed